Let's talk about Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 5. One of the first things we see when the episode starts is Sansa now traveling around with Brienne. I think that Sansa's new role in the show is great. With Brienne, she ends up confronting Lord Baelish. Now, Lord Baelish is, in her eyes and in mine as well, a total dick for abandoning her with Ramsay, and I would say that's putting it lightly. So she finally comes face to face with him after going through all this torture. And I mean, for Sansa, it's been nothing but torture up until this point in the show. So, you know, it's great to finally see her taking back some of that power and be in a position with Lord Baelish where she's letting him know I could kill you, to the point where he's asking, "Do you want me to beg for my life? Because I will." And I think that's a great moment in tonight's episode. Or another big Game of Thrones scene tonight was Arya. Arya is one of the coolest evolving stories in the show right now, in my opinion. I love her show. I love the faceless god, the god of death. How it's been alluded to ever since she was doing her sword training in the very beginning in the first season of the show, all the way up until now. I think that's greatly positioned. I love that, and I think it's interesting now how we're seeing her back in the good graces of Jaqen H'ghar, the no-faced man, but at the same time, she's struggling. She's not really yet able to let go of the fact that she is Arya Stark. And I forget the girl's name, but her opponent sees that in her. And we've got to believe that Jaqen H'ghar, the no-faced man, sees that in her as well, and that he must, in some way, know, or the god of death is acting through him. But when he sends her out on the next assignment and she's right there in the play, and the play is about everything that happened to her father and her family previously, that's going to stimulate a fire in her. It's going to get a rise out of her. It's going to test her. It's going to test her will and her resolve. She's getting a second chance, but that doesn't mean things are going to be easy. Things were never going to be easy with the no face God. And she really has to figure out for herself, is she going to be able to serve a God who doesn't do what Arya Stark wants? Will she be able to give up her identity? Will she be able to be no one? Or is what the show's hinting at, and I think maybe, that no, she's not able to do that. She has too much of a conscience and too much of a personality and too much of a history and just too much Arya Stark to be anything but Arya Stark. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. This isn't my favorite storyline, but you've got the whole Iron Price, Ironborn, Iron Throne, not Iron Throne, Iron Islands with Theon and Yura, his sister. Their uncle Euron just killed their dad and comes back, knows what he's walking into, knows he's walking into this election of sorts, and just totally fesses up. I paid the iron price. I killed the previous king, and I think I deserve it. I'm going to lead us to victory. But what's most interesting about this is if he actually fulfills his plan, he says he's going to unite with Daenerys. And she does, after all those ships got burned, need new ships. So it'd be interesting just to see how he plays in with Daenerys' story, because that's one of the more interesting stories to me, as opposed to the scenes that center on Theon. I mean, that's just me personally. I think Theon, he was kind of a jerk. He kind of got what was coming to him. It's good. It's good to see him sticking up for his sister, kind of redeeming himself a bit. But he's just not my favorite guy. Still, not my favorite part of the story. Speaking of Daenerys, though, it's good to see her back in power. I was worried about her for a while until the end of last week's episode that she was not going to be as powerful anymore. She had gotten herself into like a bad situation and maybe couldn't get out of it. But I mean, she really did a whole 180 on me with that one. So, and I was very relieved to see her back in the fire, back on top, back conquering, kind of doing her thing, taking power, showing us that like, she's still Daenerys Stormborn and breaker of chains and all that. So, that's cool to see. And it was also, I thought, touching the romantic element between Ser Jorah and Daenerys, where he kind of betrayed her and he was like a liar and she couldn't trust him and she thought she like really liked him, and then she was like, oh, I don't know. But now it's finally at this point where it's like he's admitting his love, even though Daario Naharis is there. And she like feels bad for him and realizes like, wow, he's like always here. He is saving me. I guess he was, more loyal than not, even though he was a bit traitorous. In the end, I guess I really won him over, and I guess he won me over too. And it's this like heart touching, I command you to heal yourself and come back to me. And, I like that. I liked that scene. I thought that was nice. That Jorah finally kind of gets some recognition, a little love back, a little respect from Daenerys, because that's all he cares about in his life, and it's what he got grayscale for in the first place. And good for him. Good for Jorah. I also like that we see Tyrion Lannister taking more of a political view to Daenerys's otherwise sometimes ruthless and chaotic reign, and turning her visions into reality, turning into something tangible. Bringing compromise to the table rather than just it's all going to go one way and then it doesn't all go that way and then you have nothing. It's like he knows that you can't always have everything you want, and sometimes you have to take things in steps and increments. And yeah, and it's just great to finally see that she is starting to come into her own, get stronger. She's coming back from the Dothraki. Maybe she'll rally them. Maybe they're going to join forces with the Unsullied. I'd love to see that. Her just really coming back in a huge way. Yeah, for sure. I'd love to see that. We also see the scene with Tyrion, Varys, and the Lord of Light religion. Um, and it's interesting the scene between Varys and the woman, the woman in red, or one of these other women in red, like Melisandre, but a different one. She seems to know something about Varys, that Varys, when his genitals were castrated and cast off and set ablaze in the fire, that he seemed to have heard something, maybe from a deity, maybe from the Lord of Light, because she's asking him, do you really want me to say what it said and who it was that said it? So, he doesn't he doesn't say yes. So, and she doesn't answer. So we as the audience, are left with this wonder of those exact questions. Like, what exactly did happen, and what does Varys know, and what does she know that he knows, and why does it have this weird kind of power over him? This guy who's usually kind of in the shadows and kind of playing it cool and using his knowledge to his advantage. Why does she kind of seem to get the jump on him in this scenario? And finally, of course, the most epic moment of all epic moments in this episode, we have everything that just happened with Bran. I mean, okay, we'll start from the beginning over here with Bran. So, Bran, uh, doesn't really want to listen to the rules of the Three-Eyed Raven. Three-Eyed Raven kind of keeps telling him caution, warning, be careful, you got to listen. A lot of serious stuff is going on. Bran's like, bah, 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 like I want to do my own thing. I want to do whatever I want. I hate my life. I just want to hang out in these visions for the rest of my life. And the Three-Eyed Raven is just like, treating him like a, spoiled brat teenager, kind of being like, come on, Bran, like, there's a lot of serious stuff going on, and you really need to get your head in the game. Like, lives are on the line here. So Bran still doesn't totally understand that at the beginning of this episode. So we see him getting a little bit reckless, careless. But before I jump into that, one thing I do want to touch on first is that we also see that the White Walkers were created by the children of the forest, or I think that's what they're called, or the children of nature, or whatever, to protect themselves against mankind, because mankind was such a devastating and vicious and vulgar and ruthless, malicious force that didn't care about any other life besides itself. Similar to the White Walkers, the White Walkers were the only thing created from man itself, mixed with magic, that could even combat man to maybe help save the creatures of the forest. That is just like, some sort of next level poetic justice right there. That's crazy in and of itself. And then on top of all that, we have Bran jumping right in there, grabbing onto a branch, doesn't bring his support, doesn't really do what he should be doing. And he gets into trouble. The White Walker King guy that we see from episode to episode isn't limited in the visions the way everyone else has been so far. He, for some reason, from whatever magic he gained from the creatures of the forest or being a White Walker or whatever, is more, I guess, fourth dimensional, like Bran in the Three-Eyed Raven, where he's not like limited by time and space and can actually interact with Bran in the dream and grabs him, sneaks up on him, grabs him. And that's enough, that he even made contact in this vision. It was real enough to create a physical mark on Bran and break whatever magical seal was restricting him from otherwise coming to kill all of them, which he proceeds to do. And then we see this epic, like, Lord of the Rings, kind of reminiscent battle, like this elven magic, like, creatures. And, I just thought that was awesome because, sometimes we forget that Game of Thrones has that Lord of the Rings lore, fantasy, outside of this world element, Sometimes it's just all about the politics. So I really love it when we see the dragons, the White Walkers, the creatures of the forest, the visions. I really love that this universe has that type of magical element to it. And I love when we get exposed to that. And of course, the most horrible, heart-wrenching, sad, grieving, depressing moment of this episode, which is why it's named The Door, which I didn't even think about at the start of the episode. Hodor, hold the door. I mean, it's so simple, and yet I never saw anything like that coming. And to be honest, I'm a little bit confused. If someone knows, feel free to comment, clear that up for me. But it was this crazy last minute thing where everything's falling apart, and Bran is like half in the visions with the Three-Eyed Raven, and he's like half kind of hearing Mira call to him that everyone's going to die if he doesn't do something and warg into Hodor. But then he's also still in the vision looking at Hodor, and then he's also warging into Hodor. So something about that seemed kind of like, how many places can Bran be warging into and dimensions can he cross at once? But I don't know, maybe he can just do that, or maybe I missed something, or maybe he could just do that. Either way, totally amazing scene. But that also just kind of says something about fate too. Like, it seemed unexpected at first that Bran grabbed the branch and got marked by the White Walker, but that's what led to Hodor becoming Hodor. Him giving his life to protect Bran in that scenario. So last time we saw Bran in the visions. We saw him call out to Ned, and Ned turned around for a second. And it kind of raised this question of, can he change the past in the visions? But we see now that any changes he makes in the past seem to have already become a part of reality. So that change that he made in the past then was a change, and he did indeed change the past, but it didn't create a new future. It was just already part of the timeline. So that's interesting as well, to kind of suggest how the visions work and how timelines in Game of Thrones as a whole work. But it really just was so sweet to see Hodor helping Bran the whole time, and Bran's wondering what could have happened to you that made you this way. And you finally see that look in his eye, and you feel it, that Bran realizes, me. Oh my God, Hodor. It was me. I made you this way because I was irresponsible, and I touched the branch, and I went in alone when I shouldn't have, and I made it so that we can be attacked, and I killed you. I killed the person that you used to be, and I killed the person that you became. And that, I think that's where we'll leave off. It was a great episode of Game of Thrones, and I can't wait to see what they do next week.